He saw what he'd feared. He'd accidentally backed the truck off the road, where it had crushed a culvert and sank into the ditch bank, lifting the front of the truck right off the road. He tried to survey the scene. The truck had a built-in winch, and if he could find something to attach the cable to, he might be able to pull himself out of trouble. But he couldn't even see the front of the truck, let alone find something on the other side of the road to hook onto. He might as well climb back into the truck and wait things out. He guessed he was in no hurry. He got back into the warmth of the truck and checked his fuel. He could last quite a while out here. The plows were built for situations like this, so that if operators got in trouble in really bad weather, they could wait out a storm. He reached under the seat for the bottle. Might as well celebrate Christmas. He snapped on the radio. "Hoy, Ernie," he called into it. "Ernie, this is Jim out on County Road 3. "Merry Christmas, buddy," answered the dispatcher. "Are you making your way back here?" "I'm afraid I've beached the old whale," Jim said. "What's up?" came the reply. He explained his situation to the radio operator. "You just sit tight, Jim, old boy," Ernie said. "Soon as we get a little break in the weather, we'll get somebody out there to get you. Could be a while, though. Things are looking grim in the immediate future." "That's okay, man. I'm in no hurry. There's no place I'd rather be." "Take care, good buddy, and keep in touch," said the dispatcher, and the radio went dead. "Oh well," thought Jim. "Things could be worse. I might not have brought the booze." He took another drink, lit a cigarette, and searched the radio for something to listen to. Time to settle in. He snoozed for a while, smoked a bit, and drank a bit. Every once in a while, he leaned forward to try to see if there had been any break in the weather. If anything, it seemed worse. He could see nothing beyond the truck. He checked his watch. It was about 10 o'clock. 2 hours to Christmas. For the first time, he thought of his own tiny family that had once been so happy at this special time of year. He took another pull on the bottle. It was the least he could do. A little while later, he again sat up and peered through the windshield of the snowplow. It was still snowing mightily, but he thought he could see something through the wall of white that surrounded him. It looked like a tiny, faint light that was somehow finding its way through the storm to him. He sat up and tried to look harder and deeper into the snow, turning on the plow's huge spotlight in an effort to trace the source of the light. He thought there might be a car. God, how it had gotten this far in these treacherous conditions. Certainly couldn't be moving at the moment. He briefly wondered what to do, then decided nothing. Whoever it was should know enough to stay in the car and wait it out, just like he was doing. Anybody who was raised in this part of the country should know it was foolishness to get out into a blizzard like this to try to walk for help. You could freeze to death if you got lost in the snow and bitter cold. He leaned forward and peered out into the snowy night. The light seemed gone, blotted out by the dismal weather. All the people in the car had to do was sit tight, and when somebody came to get him, they'd get them as well. It all seemed pretty simple. That was until he heard a frantic pounding on the outside of the truck sometime later. He forced the door open, fighting the wind as he did so, and searched for the source of the sound, finally seeing the outline of a person battling with all their might against the fierce gusts and inching along the side of the snowplow. Jim jumped from the truck and made his way to the person, grabbing them by the arm and helping guide them toward the truck's open door. He pushed the person ahead of him and up into the cab of the truck, following quickly along, eager to escape the bone-chilling elements. Soon as they were inside the truck, Jim found himself face to face with a very excited and frantic young man. "You have to help us," the young man pleaded. "You should have stayed in your car," Jim said. "We'll have to wait it out." "You don't understand," the young man said. "My wife's going to have a baby. She's in labor in the car. I have to get her to the hospital. You've got to help us." Jim took a huge gulp. "Hold on," he said. "Your wife's in the car?" Yes, said the young man. I saw your light. Our car's stalled. I didn't know what to do. I almost didn't make it to the truck. Christ, said Jim. What to do was what he was thinking. They'd have to get her out of there or she'd freeze. But that was going to be easier said than done. He peered out the truck's windshield. The car's headlights, once faintly visible, were nowhere to be seen. He reached for the radio. Hoy, Ernie, he said after bringing it to life. We've got a situation here. He told the dispatcher what was happening. You're in a pickle, that's for sure, Ernie said. I'm going to have to try to get the girl to the truck, Jim said. We've at least got to get her out of the cold. I'll run a line from the truck and hope it's long enough to reach her, and then that she's well enough to get back here through the storm. Christ, old boy, you're having quite a Christmas, Ernie said. I'll get back to you after we give this a try, Jim answered. I'll let the police know what's happening so they can be ready if the storm breaks, the radio operator answered before breaking the connection. Jim started to bundle himself up, pulling his huge parka up around him, reaching for the ski mask he always carried, then pulling the parka's hood up around his head. He would try to be ready for this adventure. What are you going to do? Asked the young man, still shaking from his experience in the cold. I'm going to try to go and get your wife, Jim answered. How will you find the car? The young man asked, some desperation in his voice. I couldn't see anything when I was out there. If you hadn't turned on your spotlight, I'd have never found you. I saw your headlights there for a minute, and I'll tie a rope off the truck so I can keep track of where it is, Jim answered. You stay here and listen for the radio. They should be sending help soon as the storm breaks a bit. Jim turned and reached back into the compartment behind the seat, coming out with a long section of coiled rope. Then he grabbed up his bottle and stuffed it into a pocket in the parka. He was ready. Time to face the elements. Good luck, said the young man. Jim just smiled and pushed the truck's door open against the strength of the howling wind and jumped down into the knee-deep snow. He made his way around to the front of the truck, having decided to tie the rope off on the plow's blade to give him as much length out into the storm as possible. He had to take off his huge warm mittens to tie off the rope, and the bitter cold turned his hands numb in what seemed an instant, making the operation of attaching rope to truck a difficult chore. Finally he accomplished it and thrust his hands back into the mitts, at last able to take a breath again. He tied the other end of the rope in a large loop around his waist, then turned like an astronaut on a spacewalk and headed into the face of the storm. It was difficult going, each step taking considerable effort, and he could see nothing beyond his own hand in front of him. Even through his layers of clothes and the huge parka, he could feel the wind raging through him, chilling him to the bottom of his soul. He had no idea how he'd find the car, but figured he'd try to head straight out from the truck, then sweep left, then right as far as he could go on his tether. He hoped that would work because it was the only plan he could think of. He reached the end of the rope after what seemed an eternity, slogging through snow with some drifts hitting waist level. He felt like he was stuck in a deep, thick bowl of porridge that had been cooked a little too long. But there was no car at the end of the rope. He said a quiet curse under his breath. Nothing was ever easy. He started to make his way to the left and could tell from his footing that he'd left the roadway and was starting into the ditch.